Why are people disrespecting adults in schools? Why are people getting away with bringing weapons to schools? Why are people getting away with getting high inside of schools? And teachers are getting to the point where it's just not, there's no dignity in it anymore.
There were some female teachers who were talking about being punched in the face, being spat on, and just what you said, there are no consequences for the children.
And it's like we're focused so much on like the racial issues that we forgot that the kids don't know how to read.
How does this not affect your psyche when, I would feel a certain type of way if I just corrected someone, they were removed from my presence and they came back doing the same thing.
This has nothing to do with pay. This has nothing to do with white supremacy. You guys just aren't holding young people or adults accountable at all in some of these facilities. And that's a lot of the problem.
How difficult is it to get these rotten apples out of the school system?
They don't want you to call them rotten apples.
Huh.
And that's part of the problem too. You can't tell the truth about what's going on.
Even when you see something that is so egregious that you would think you'd have a universal head nodding of people saying, yeah, this is wrong. But there's always somebody inside of the comment section excusing that type of behavior.
When kids can curse you out and push and shove you with a minimal consequence, it's like people are like, I can take my talent somewhere else.
Hello everyone, my name is Rogan and this is Bahamian Gyal. On my platform, I do social commentary and reaction videos. I encourage my audience to have private conversations in public. My next guest is a teacher out of Chicago who is sounding off in the public school system. He's detailing how politics, the education system, a lack of accountability and values are creating the perfect storm to hurt Black students. And he says the system and administrators have created an environment where you can't tell the truth about what's going on. Well, I spoke to that teacher who's asked to be identified only as Coach J, and he gave a no-holds-barred account of what's been happening. Let's tune into that conversation now. Let's just start, first of all, by saying thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I've been wanting a teacher to come on my program for a very long time, and I had teachers say, I'll come after I've quit in 3 or 6 months, then I'll come and I'll talk to you and I'll say everything. So it's so good to have you here, Coach J. And let's just first start off talking about why you chose this profession, because, teaching is one of those careers I believe is one of the most noble professions you can have. But it's not one of those careers where you're going to make a ton of money. And for a lot of people, the big buck is everything. So just tell me why you decided to get into teaching.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me. And the big buck is not everything to me. First and foremost, I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and my background was tumultuous, and we're survivors and we survived, and but I had support from teachers and coaches, and I never forgot that. And even as a high school student, I thought I'd have to pay that back one day, pay that forward to the young people that I may encounter. So it was just a natural transition. I actually started out with social work, but then I had an epiphany one day down in Tampa, Florida, which is where I was living at the time. Education. So, took the proper channels, and here I am. I've been doing this for 13 years now, and I love it. I love every day of it, actually.
Wonderful. I love to hear that. And one of the things that you said that really resonated with me is that money isn't everything. No. And I'm of the same mindset. I kind of, and I hope no one's offended by this, but I'm sometimes sickened by people who only think about the big buck, because there's so much more to it. And like I said, this is such a noble profession. So you've been in this for 13 years. You and I think we first connected in September when you saw my video, yeah. Education Nightmare. I think we have like 300,000 teachers in the public school system that quit from 2020 to 2022. And there are more teachers saying, I'm out of here. But you've taken a different route. You have a different mindset, which is you've chosen to stay and fight the good fight. And so I want to first start off by asking, why is it that so many teachers are, what's behind this mass exodus?
Yeah, so you hear a lot of people bring up the low-hanging fruit, which is the systemic issues of pay and lack of resources. And I remind people that it's always been that way. But why the mass it is now? And I think what's happened is tons of changes in policy, tons of changes in accountability, and our general approach to like what we think students need from us versus what reality says. And I think a lot of times that's pushing people away, is pitting students against teachers, administrators against teachers, and teachers are just feeling isolated. And even administrators who want to do the right thing are hamstringed by politics, the politics of the business now. So all of that seeping through the walls, and it's becoming less and less and less about young people and more about some things that I don't necessarily feel comfortable saying right here, but it's not about the kids all the time. And sometimes it is. And that is a silver lining. So there are some good people in this industry still doing the good work and still fighting. And it's just not... it's not consistently happening across this country, for sure. In the city I'm in, Chicago, You know, I'm a coach, so it gives me access to a lot of different schools across the city, whether it's Catholic, selective enrollment, or just the general public school. And what you see is issues with leadership upon walking in the door. You see immediately what's wrong with the school, and it's like, wait a minute, this has nothing to do with pay. This has nothing to do with white supremacy. You guys just aren't holding young people or adults accountable at all in some of these facilities, and that's a lot of the problem. And then the systemic stuff is like secondary to like what you see immediately. Like, why are people disrespecting adults in schools? Why are people getting away with bringing weapons to schools? Why are people getting away with getting high inside of schools? And teachers are getting to the point where it's just not, there's no dignity in it anymore. And when kids can curse you out and push and shove you with a minimum consequence, it's like people like, you know, I can take my talent somewhere else.
Take your talents to South Beach.
Yeah.
But, you know, and this is one of the things that really got to me when I did the last video, just listening to so many teachers. There were some female teachers who were talking about being punched in the face, being spat on, and just what you said, there are no consequences for the children. Are we to the place where is it very difficult to expel kids from the public school system? Why is it? If you could explain that for me, because I went to a private school. I'm grateful for that. So you knew not to act up because there are serious consequences for it. How difficult is it to get these rotten apples out of the school system?
First of all, they don't want you to call them rotten apples. And that's part of the problem, too. You can't tell the truth about what's going on. I mean, if a young man is coming to school every single day, insubordinate, every day high, every day disruptive, every day fighting, every day gang affiliated, it's like you aren't going to save that life as much as you're going to destroy other people's lives adjacent to this young man. And you're spending way too much time trying to save this young man's life, and you're neglecting the needs of the people who are here. Because, you know, I teach in an urban setting, and there's a little bit of everything in my classes, but I see a lot of people who are hungry for something. And then I got a one or two in every class that need to be sent somewhere else because they're just not able to get in with the program, or even just comply with basic instructions like have a seat, level 0, while I take attendance. Very simple. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to do that. You can have a learning disability to do that. You can have a behavior intervention plan to still do that. But what these young people are realizing is that the system is actually playing in their favor. If I want to throw a tantrum, America's going to give me 17 different scapegoats today. Whereas, like, I'm never held accountable. I'm upset, so I cursed out a teacher and I punched a neighbor. And the school might say, well, he was hungry. And I'm like, wait a minute.
I've seen that, and I hate to cut you off right there because that is such a valid point. I mean, even for me, when I do certain videos on my platform, you know, you would think, even when you see something that is so egregious, that you would think you'd have a universal head nodding of people saying, yeah, this is wrong. Yeah. But there's always somebody inside of the comment section who are excusing that type of behavior. And, and I can't imagine what it's like in the school setting, because as you said, it's extremely disruptive to other children who really are hungry for knowledge, who are hungry for structure, and who want to be there. And so that's why I just never understood. I didn't grow up in the States. I don't know how, like I said, how tough it is to get rid of a student out of the classroom, but how tough is it? Or is it just they just move to another teacher? What happens?
It's really difficult because they've even passed legislation to support a new approach to dealing with disciplinary issues. I'm just speaking for the state of Illinois right now specifically. Since I think around 2017 or 18, there was like actual legislation passed that made it more difficult to suspend and expel kids. And in theory, it's like we don't want to funnel kids into the school to prison pipeline. But what actually happened, and you can just pretty much talk to any teacher walking down the mall, walking down the street in the state of Illinois, what happened is the most at-risk kids began to terrorize. And when they realized that restorative practices actually just translates to no accountability, they just ran amok. And so kids get high more often. They fight more often. In some of the schools where those things weren't happening, post-pandemic especially, the disruptive behaviors took a new toll. It went to a new height, and kids really began to push the system and press buttons that they hadn't pressed before. I'm speaking for certain schools. You know, some schools have been struggling since the 70s and 80s. And the difference is a lot of schools are struggling now, as those schools have. Some of the schools were not all urban schools were failing kids, but more so, or more of them are doing it because they're following this new policy, which is like, you know, take the restorative approach. And I'm not against that because I have children. I understand I have to do the restorative approach every single night, but my kids get held accountable. You know, my kids don't talk back to me when I'm redirecting them. My kids don't curse me out as I'm redirecting them. And there's no, the elevated response doesn't match what the kids are doing. So if a young man curses me out because he doesn't like what I'm saying to him, someone may pick him up, true enough, but they may bring him back quickly. after a quick conversation. And it's like, wait a minute, but I'm humiliated. And this young person comes back, and most of the time they are not any different than when they left. They may come back with a smirk on their face. They may come back and do a bunch of nonverbal gestures, and sometimes they just curse again or do the thing again that got them removed in the first place. So that's just the struggle in the state of Illinois, and I would imagine it's everywhere. And I'm not saying that my school is like the mecca of this issue. I'm just saying that I have teacher friends from New York to Florida to California to Kansas, Missouri, and here in Illinois, and we're all saying the same thing. We're all saying the same thing, and it's a problem. And like I said, a lot of it comes down from the politics of the day and the policies, which is the politics, and it just doesn't make any sense because it doesn't match what I mean. If the kids were like, if this was the 1960s and people were on their knees screaming, "We shall overcome" and "We want free," that was a different type of situation.
Correct.
Our response to what they're doing and what the communities are doing matches like a different era of our struggle as minorities in the country. Because I work in a school that's 100% minority, and our response to them is actually it doesn't fit what they're doing. Like the violence and the anger and the aggression towards people who are trying to save their lives is just not appropriate. But it's like the kids don't really have to grapple with the fact that you need some accountability too. I'm sorry for ranting. I'm all over the place.
No, please. No, you're not. You're giving the insight that I think a lot of people need to hear, because we hear the news stories, but I love talking to teachers one-on-one because they're going to give you the full 100. They're going to tell you exactly what's happening. How does this not affect your psyche when, I would feel a certain type of way if I just corrected someone, they were removed from my presence and they came back doing the same thing. I would feel as if I'm not respected in that environment. And it doesn't augur well for the other children who are watching this too, because some kids might say this is wrong and some might say I can get away with doing the same thing too. But how do you go ahead.
And it's funny you say that because so many young people articulate that to me every single day. And so many parents, and that's the funny thing, a lot of the changes that are happening, leadership abroad is just basically saying, look, this is what the families wanted and this is what the kids wanted. And when you talk to the families, a lot of times the families are like, they're disgruntled, they're upset, they don't understand why there's no consequence for why I see this person doing this thing outside the school. Why is this person allowed to get a 1-day in-school suspension and come back and do it again? And the parents are always perplexed. And it's just a bizarre time because, like I said, not all schools struggle equally, but more schools are struggling today than ever because of this equal circumstance that we're all dealing with.
What is it like for you and your colleagues, I suppose the ones who've confided in you? How do you all deal with the parents who might not be as supportive of your efforts? Yeah. Because, again, like I said, I went to a private school, and if the principal or the teacher had to call a parent, it was like you didn't want your parent called because it was just going to be a nightmare because the parent was very accountable and they weren't with the BS. So, like, what are you dealing with in Chicago?
Surprisingly, you don't get as many parents who are just totally against structure and accountability in the systems. A lot of times, we do have to fill the void, though. There's a lot of parents who, sometimes you got a single mom with 3 kids in your school, and the young people just need guidance at the school that maybe they can't get from the neighborhood. Or maybe mom's working a double every day. Yeah. But that's when the mentors and the leaders show up. We have no problem. That's not a beef of a teacher. I mean, that's what we signed up for. That's what makes us warm and fuzzy. So most of the time, those type of parents may be hands off, but when you see them, they're on board with what you're doing. But I think there's just so many barriers with the politics of what's going on, because even if a parent does say, like I had a parent that's one time said, hey, lower the boom on my kid, but the system didn't want to lower the boom. And the
really?
Flesh and blood, yeah. I mean, things like that happen all the time. A lot of parents, I don't meet a lot of parents that are like, no accountability for my kid. And sometimes parents are just generally confused because they listen to what the young person says, then they talk to the adults and it's like, oh, that happened? Okay, and the parents generally are fine. They're not as much of the issue as you think. Not in my experiences, but for sure the system is trying to save people who the system isn't doing a good job at saving, but they're hurting everyone, teachers, administrators, and young people who are here for the right reason. Because I'm going to be honest with you, not every young person who walks into our Chicago schools is here to learn and to be stimulated. Some of them come in with poor intentions, with cruel intentions, with evil intentions, and they're able to get away with it way too frequently.
Oh, sorry to interrupt, and I hope that you're enjoying this conversation as much as I am. I just wanted to pop in to say that if you really like this kind of content, be sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on your notification bell. That's most important so that you know when I drop a video on this channel. And if you like my platform and you like my style, do consider becoming a member. All the details are down below. Okay, that's it. Back to the conversation. What are some of the urban issues that you feel that complicate the whole education process? Teaching kids, reaching them?
Just the values. You know, if the neighborhood is valuing gang banging and gangland and murder and mayhem, it takes a lot of work to reprogram those young people. And if the parents, because not all parents, you know, are created equal, and if the parents not necessarily combating that, the school is exclusively trying to do that work. But that's case by case. You know, not every teacher is equally as invested. Not every school administration is equally as invested. So a lot of times young people just get lucky and they meet that hero. And that hero has the capacity and the ability and the bandwidth to rescue. But those issues seep into urban schools, and it makes it almost impossible to educate some kids because a lot of times they've just been through too much and they've seen too much. And this public school setting is not what they need. They need something else far away, far more therapeutic, with less distractions. But a lot of times they send all kids to us, and we can't deal with most of the issues. And you know, saying, like, going back to the values, though, the community's got to value more. You know, the school has restructured itself to be restorative, but the neighborhood is still murder and mayhem. And it's like, how's that going to work when they go home back to the chaos and the values that don't necessarily support productivity? And that's what we deal with a lot of times. And you get lucky sometimes when, like I said, when you meet that hero, you get a kid, you convince him that football is good for him, but we tricked him into saving his own life because it's actually the mentor and the structure, and your GPA goes up, and now you're around kids that aren't smoking and drinking and killing and cursing. And it's like, that happens sometimes, but a lot of times, like I said, sometimes teachers are just burnt out, coaches are burnt out, and that hero doesn't exist.
Burnout is one of those things that you just mentioned, and I've heard teachers say that a lot of times, like beyond the school load, because you have so many teachers who are quitting and they have more kids to teach, or they just are frustrated about the whole process. They're frustrated with the administrators. They're frustrated with the unions. So, like, what are some of the issues why your teachers have said goodbye?
Lack of support. Going back to I mean, we have our boots on the ground in these classrooms, and like I said, if a student, like me personally, I just don't allow. I guess the thing that I do well is I don't allow young people to behave like that in my presence, and when they do, I just kind of go rogue, and it's worked for me. And believe it or not, I actually get some support from some of my leadership, and I'm blessed to have that opportunity to still be employed with that support. But not everyone gets that support, and not everyone is even brave enough to go rogue in that moment, because when it comes to fight or flight, you know, instincts, I got to save myself. But a lot of times, you know, I am supported by my direct leadership here, and I'm blessed to say that because not all my friends can say the same thing. Citywide, countrywide, no one's ever mentioned pay because we know that we got in this industry understanding it. And I also work in Illinois, and we are compensated, I'm sure, much better than Mississippi, for example. So that's not a complaint per se of ours. Here in Illinois, every one of my colleagues or friends who walked away just couldn't take the disrespect from young people, and sometimes it is the parents not understanding what we're doing this for and what our role is and why we're putting so much pressure on your young person. That's sometimes that's an argument, but leadership just sometimes being out of touch with what we're going through and what our needs are, and forget that. Just support us. That's all I've ever wanted. Just understand what I'm going through. You see what I see, so why are you pretending like I'm crazy or like I need to try on a different set of lenses? You see what I see, and sometimes they're avoiding what I'm having to walk through because I can see you walking away from the issues. But so a lot of times it's that, and then, you know, we find allies sometimes, but we get burnt out, and we try to stand in solidarity, and sometimes it's too much, and, you know, in the end, like, my mental health matters too.
Absolutely. Do you think the poor conditions, the burnout, the everything that comes along with teaching these days, it seems in the public school system, I mean, beyond the teachers who are quitting, do you think it's going to make it even more difficult for people who are interested in entering the profession to want to continue along this path? Or do you anticipate people are going to be like, nope, not going that route?
Absolutely. Every day of my life, I'm going to my son's football practice out in the suburbs, and what do you do for a living, sir? I'm a teacher in Chicago. Whoa, what's wrong with you? Like, you okay? Like it's like that. It's literally like that. Like, people are like, I couldn't do it. That's what we wonder sometimes. But in my conscious, my subconscious, I understand that I've been called to do this work. So no matter what my gripes are, what my discrepancies are, I know that there's a young person in that gym or in that hallway who really needs that connection with me. And I'm not fighting them. I'm not even fighting their parents. I'm fighting the community. I'm fighting the system. And I'm like, look, this is not working. This is not working. I mean, if you just come look I'm sure there's data out there that shows you that like kids aren't fighting less since we got rid of discipline, or I'm sorry, punishment. Since we got rid of the punishment in our more punitive measures, kids aren't fighting less. They're not vaping less. They're not disrespecting less. It's not warm and fuzzy in schools now. The teachers are more anxious now, and that's the thing we want to be heard on. That part right there, when we mention things like that, it's a runaround, but it's like never a direct response. And if I was a leader of an organization, I go immediately to that source and say, what's the problem, teachers? You guys are collectively saying this. There's a solution for that. You can't curse at my teachers. Here's an assembly. You curse at my teachers, you go home. And it's like, young people aren't crazy. Even in the most impoverished communities, you get them inside that school, what you find out when they get a strong leader, they can have sense. And it's like, oh, and that means you can rescue them all then. You just need the right leadership.
Exactly.
Right leadership, bold leadership.
I don't understand it. I really, really don't. Because to me, it's to your point. If you have the evidence in the front of you that things aren't changing in the school system with the kids, they're still on this negative path. You have teachers who are quitting. You're having difficulty recruiting teachers, and I certainly understand why people are like they won't do it. But then I look at people like you, and I'm like, you're precisely the type of person who I would want to be a teacher, because you have it in you not to just quit and leave these kids, but you have to protect people like you as well. You cannot look at someone and say, oh, they're altruistic. They're doing this out of the goodness of their heart, and you don't protect them. You don't defend them. You just kind of leave them to their devices and just say, well, you're on your own. That's insulting to me, to do that to somebody who is giving their time, their heart, their effort to these kids. And the sad part is, I think about the children who do have a potential for a great future, who are being put in this scenario where they're alongside individuals who just aren't going anywhere, and they're just bringing them down.
Yeah.
100%. It's a sad situation.
100%. And the saddest thing is that you come into Chicago, and I know what the media may lead you to believe, and it's real, but there's also something that's never stated, is that most of these young people, by far and large, just need strong leadership in their neighborhoods, in their households, and in their schools. And what I find, because like I said, I'm a coach, so I'm all over north, south, east, west of the city. I'm in all the schools, and I'm interacting with all the young people. And what I find is that leadership is far and few. It's scarce. It's not consistent. And when I meet like for example, in Chicago, we're like a third African American, a third Latino, a third white. And when you interact with an all black campus, when you find that leadership that they need, those black students function just like those white students in the well-to-do communities. When the leadership's there, who cares about the socioeconomics? When leadership is there, the young people respond to it, and those young people become what the leadership is. So when the leadership is able to sacrifice and show up on time and watch his language and promote values that make the community better, the young people emulate it. So there's too many excuses being made right now, because like I said, the scapegoat is always white supremacy or something. But it's like, what are we doing today? I know the legacy of white supremacy. I'm African American too, and I'm from the same country. I know the legacy, but it's not the legacy. Having the conversation about the legacy every day to justify why the kids can't be on time is just crap. It's crap, because they're on time to do the things they care about. They're
Amen.
on time. Yeah, they're on time to get the new iPhone. They're on time to get the Jordans. They're on time to go to the concert. They're on time for the movie theater. They can come on time to school. And some people think that, they're just too traumatized to be on. They're just too traumatized to. And I'm
It's
like,
excuses, making the excuses, excusing
Absolutely.
the behavior.
But the young people don't even want it. That's the thing. The system thinks the young people want it. But when you talk to the young people, they say, thank you for being hard on me. Thank you for being hard on me. They write you that letter during Teacher Appreciation Week in 7 months or whatever it is from today. They'll tell you, thank you for being tough on me. You're the only teacher who held me accountable. They say those things. And it's like, that you ask, how are you still here? That's how I'm still here. Because those young people have always been able to articulate that with me. And like I say, I do have allies in high places here too. My direct lead in my organization is a good guy. And he hears me out. I can vent to this guy, and I can be honest with this guy. And he's part of the reason why, I'm able to get in here with my autonomy and do my thing, and he trusts me. So I do appreciate him for that. But not everybody's got that situation. In school, every school is different. And every school's got, some people just focus solely on excuses. Well, we can't, but it's also like, it's easy to just like comp out and not do any work either. As a leader and as a teacher, oh, the kids are too traumatized, so we just gave them worksheets and let them scream. It's like, wait a minute. And that's real. That's real. And at the high school level, in some of these schools, things like that are happening. But we're not all giving up on kids and communities just because politics are getting weird. And politics are getting weird because that's what it is. It's like you didn't have these bright ideas until someone's had those bright ideas above you on the political landscape, and it's just like you're doing what they're doing, but it doesn't even fit what we're doing.
Exactly.
We're working with at-risk youth. We're working with kids who are gang affiliated. They need something different. It's not like so the kid that's got the gun in his book bag that he's stashing a bush around the corner, he needs something a little bit more than you saying, stop it, here's some piece of candy, and go back to class.
Amen.
He's not 8, he's 15 with tattoos on his neck. But they treat them all like they're like
they 8-year little boy or little girl. Yeah. I agree. And gosh.
And the crazy thing is the young people, because I teach like this, they agree.
So let's talk about the silver lining, because you're still in this. You have no plans of moving away from this right now. You want to help these kids. Is there a silver lining? Where do we go from here to actually course correct?
Well, the first thing is that the young people are just waiting for leadership. And I say it every single day. Leadership, because that's the thing. That's it. It's not even rocket science. Like someone in some board of education somewhere is like, what do we do? Leadership. Simple. Leadership. As a coach is leadership. When the football team is failing, replace the head coach, replace the coaching staff at times, and replace some of the players, and now you go win the Super Bowl type of thing. It's very basic to me. So it's leadership. The silver lining is that in my particular position, I'll say that I have young people who articulate that they love me and they need me and they appreciate me. So the young people are still here and they're still waiting. They're still waiting for the thing that we've been promising them for like a century and a half in this country in public education. And then there's like there are actual administrators fighting the fight with us at times. There are administrators who sympathize with us and empathize with us. And like I said, we stand in solidarity with those people too. And when you come to work and you get that message from that young person who says like, hey, I was thinking about doing this thing. I was going to transfer out to this rougher situation, but I stayed because of what you said in class yesterday. That hit me hard. Kids tell us those things all the time. So the silver line is that the kids aren't dead. The kids aren't abused by the pandemic and they can't recover. The kids are fine. I think the kids forgot about the pandemic. I think adults keep talking about the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And even with the racial stuff, a lot of times that stuff it divides the kids because I see it live. And as an African American, I can admit that a lot of times you had those conversations and people go home and it's like it's awkward and there's no kumbaya, and it's not like MLK speech on Washington. It's the opposite. It's like, do we all hate it? It's like some people are bringing this stuff up and implanting this stuff, and it's like I always wonder like who's benefiting from this, because we're walking around kind of like down and out about it, and we feel divided and disconnected from one another. And I look at the kids and I'm like, the kids don't even like really recognize this racial thing.
Exactly.
I mean, my campus is like Black and Latino, and these African American and Latino, and they're like going to prom with each other. They're playing sports together. Yeah. They're not walking around here like
we're
fighting.
making it a big deal and they ain't. They just friends.
So the silver
they rock with you if they rock with you, and if they don't rock with you, but it has nothing to do with your race.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's an outlier. Of
course.
Here and there.
They exist everywhere. Uh-huh.
But it's not the thing. And it's like we're focused so much on like the racial issues that we forgot that the kids don't know how to read. They don't read at level. We forgot that. So we focus less on that and more on like what our founding fathers did wrong. And I know they did wrong things, but it's also 2024 and these kids can't read properly. These kids don't write proficiently. So what do we do about that? And that's where I am. Like the past is the past. How do we move forward? I think I heard like Morgan Freeman and Denzel Washington say something similar recently. Yeah.
Like just stop talking about it. Just move forward.
Yeah.
You brought up the point about some of them not knowing how to read and write. Do you think that manifests into or leads to behavioral issues as well? Or what happens when are you able to automatically recognize when a kid is struggling in that way?
Well, yeah. And I mean, if you aren't proficient academically, there's a shame related to that, associated with that, and you don't want that outing. So I understand that also, but what's the response from the school? Like, what's our response? Like, excuse the behavior? Well, that's not the solution either. You still can't scream and jump off walls and throw tennis balls and curse at people because you are struggling academically. So I think we just need to do more to identify. I mean, and schools aren't necessarily neglecting that. We're neglecting the behaviors. Like schools, I mean, there's tons of like kids with like diagnosis and there's those things are happening. And we know who those kids are on all of our rosters. That's not the issue. The issue is when something egregious happens, what do we do in response to, like, why? I mean, the why is a thing, but like also the behavior is a thing. The harm is a thing too. And we don't focus on the harm that they cause. We focus on the harm that society may have caused them. 10 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, or harm that society calls their people 50 years ago. And I'm not saying none of that's relevant. I'm saying that in the hierarchy of our immediate needs, that's like way down here.
Absolutely.
Like, first of all, put the guns down, denounce gang membership,
That part.
respect people, be on time. Just because you struggle, mom and dad, doesn't mean you got to raise your kid to devalue like humanity because you went through hell. I mean, I think instincts say like raise the kid better than I went. You know, and that's my life story. My mom and dad had struggles, but my coach filled in, and you know, still to this day, you know, I'm grateful for those moments. But what I think about sometimes is, had I been a kid today, what would have happened with my mom and dad's struggles? My incarcerated father, my mom had her personal issues, and I love my mom, but that's our story. What would have happened if Mr. Russell, Michael D. Russell from St. Louis, Missouri, I can say his name because he's a legend, but what would happen if he wasn't there to receive us, my buddies, track and football, and respect women, he would always say. And I had never even heard of such a concept, like watch your language around the young ladies. And we're like, okay, coach. And oh man, it's just, yeah, dude, it's like be your authentic self is what they say. And now people are being like, things that just are undesirable. Like, and I tell the kids all the time, if your authentic self is gang affiliated, I want you to fake around me. Don't be yourself.
Yeah, don't be yourself around me. Don't bring that degeneracy around me.
Yeah. If you're self-destructing in public all day, then I need you to fake.
Hey, fake it with me.
Yes. And literally I say this and the kids are like,
I love this so much. I really appreciate this conversation so much. And I love the fact that you're very accountable. Like, one of the things I always preach on this channel is about agency of self, you know, that you're responsible. There are so many people. I mean, you could say, oh, I have a student who's been through the worst, and I could point to somebody else who's had it even tougher. Somebody always eclipses somebody in terms of their experience. But I'm not saying that those things don't matter, but I'm saying that we have agency over ourselves. We can do better for ourselves. But I'm so grateful and thankful that you are a blessing to these kids in Chicago. You truly, truly are. And like I said, I love your energy so much. And I'm grateful that there's a teacher there who genuinely wants to be there, cares about kids. And it's obvious by, like you said, through the letters that they're giving you, that they see it and they feel it too. So I definitely do salute you for that. And I want to thank you so much for watching my video and for reaching out, because it's great. I was telling Coach Jay at the beginning, I thought it was a woman communicating with me inside of the email. And then when he pops up, I'm like, oh, it's a guy. He's like, does it change anything? I said, nope, I love it. It's good to see a man on this platform having these conversations. So thank you so much, Coach Jay. And I wish you the absolute best. And you have an open invitation. If you choose to come back on the show and have conversations and say how things are going, I would really love to have you come back. Okay?
Thank you.
All right.
I appreciate you having me.
Well, if you reached the end of this video and you really liked it, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. Drop your comments down below. Let me know what you thought about what Coach Jay had to say. If you are a teacher or a parent in Chicago and you want to weigh in on this conversation, please do so in the comment section. Also, if you are a student who's in an inner city and you are dealing with a lot of the things that Coach Jay talked about, I want to hear from you especially. And if you enjoy videos like this, be sure to watch this one and that one next. See you later. Toodles.